Souček, that guy, every week I don't put him in my fantasy team, I feel stupider. And every week I don't put him in my team, and every week he scores. And he seems like the nicest guy. Like, West Ham seems like a really fun place to be at the moment. The players are all kind of joking with each other on Twitter. But they're fourth. So they are now on, I've got another stat for this. They are now on 35 points, okay? It took them 35 games last season to reach that many points.
Tom, how are you feeling, man? We're going to call you back on the pod.
We have to get him on. We have to get him on to talk about this season, as long as he doesn't jinx it afterwards. But we have to get Tom on. And David Moyes has got this team playing like a system that really works. It seems like they really know what they're doing. Antonio has been crushing it. He should have scored this week. He had enough chances. He should have had 3 or 4. But anyway, West Ham won 3-2. And they just look like such a fun team to watch at the moment. And Thomas Souček, 7 goals. He now has more goals this season than Sterling, Mane, and Aubameyang.
Damn, Thomas delivering. And that's why last night I posted a throwback West Ham picture exactly to praise them for the recent form. What a good picture. Joe Cole, Rio Ferdinand, Paolo Di Canio, and fat Frankie Lampard all hugging together. All hugging each other in 2000. What a team that was.
That generation was unbelievable.
Ridiculous. Very quickly, Rory, we're almost done. We're about to jump to our weekly topic in which we'll cover fantasy football, games to look forward to this weekend in the Prem.
Games to look forward to. I don't know if I'm actually looking forward to it, but we've got Arsenal against Manchester United, of course, on Saturday. Then we have Southampton versus Villa, also on Saturday. I think that will be an interesting game. And on Sunday, the games that I pointed out are Leicester versus Leeds and West Ham versus Liverpool. I think they are all, especially West Ham, Liverpool. I've got a feeling about that game. That's going to be a good one.
And in the boot, nello stivale, the games that you want to look at are Torino-Fiorentina, because they are kind of in the lower part of the league, but it could be a good, interesting game. Sampdoria-Juventus, banana peel? I strongly hope so. Sampdoria have currently 3 wins in their last 5 games. They're looking pretty solid. They've got like 4 or 5 players from Scandinavia, and they keep posting shit about Vikings and stuff on on their social media accounts.
Quickly about Vikings, we signed Martin Odegaard, and I'm really excited about it. Go, yeah, next one.
Perfect. And Eriksen, another Viking. Thank you, man. And then Atalanta-Lazio again, this time in the league. Isn't it funny how like so many times like Southampton played Arsenal for the FA Cup, and right after they play each other in the Prem. This is happening again with Atalanta-Lazio and Roma-Verona. Keep your eyes on Verona. We've been saying that since the beginning of the season. They are now 4 points shy of a spot in Europe. And then next week, guys, on Wednesday, Inter versus Juventus in the Coppa Italia, and Atalanta versus the winner between Napoli and Spezia. That's it with our Euro review. We are ready to tell you everything about the differences between the English Fantasy Football League and the Italian Fantacalcio. If you press stop right now,
spoiler alert, I'm terrible at both.
We are kind of both terrible at it. And here we are for our weekly topic session. Rory, I see you dancing. Were you listening to some music during the break?
I was in our little interval, yeah. Listen to a bit of grime music, getting myself pumped up.
Nice. Yeah, Rory is really into grime, in case you didn't know. But
if you can't tell by how I look, I think I look like the type now.
Yeah, absolutely. So this week, we are going to talk to you about fantasy football, right? So as if football wasn't enough for us football nerds, if Football Manager wasn't enough for us football nerds, there is also fantasy football. And today we would like to shed a light on the big, actually, differences that there are between the Italian version called the Fantacalcio and the English version called, what's the name again?
Fantasy football.
Fantasy football?
FPL is on Twitter, Fantasy Premier League. Yeah.
And the thing is that it's actually the app that you use to play the game in England is actually run by the Premier League, correct?
Yeah. So it's run by the Premier League, and there's like huge prizes for the guy who wins it. I think the guy who won it last year was like a grand chess champion or something. Like, it's crazy. Like, there's massive prizes. But yeah, that's the only one that's ever used. There's a few newspapers in the UK that run them, and they're fairly popular. I think like the Telegraph one's quite good. But for like people our generation, like my dad plays the one in the newspaper, right? I feel like the people our generation kind of try and do the FPL on the app. Yeah.
Right. So the biggest difference that comes to that you notice right away is that in the Italian version of Fantacalcio, you keep the same players for the entire season. And I mean, there is only one, for example, Romelu Lukaku. There is only one person in the league who is going to have Romelu Lukaku. While in England, you can actually change players from one week to the next. How does that work, Rory?
Yeah, so everybody can have Harry Kane, for example, right? So I remember when I was growing up, if you didn't have Thierry Henry in your team, you were instantly at a disadvantage to everybody else, right? Because everybody had him in their team. So it does mean, everybody can have the same players and you get one free transfer a week. So it means you have to study the form a bit more, which despite running this podcast, I don't run it, despite being on this podcast.
Hey.
Sorry, Tommy, I did you a massive disservice there. Despite being on this podcast, I'm terrible at studying form, but it does mean that you can kind of, if you keep an eye on who's like how players are doing, how they do against other opponents historically, you can keep an eye on it that way. But you get one transfer a week. Then there are 3 bonuses you can use, right?
All right. What are they?
So you get bench boost, which means that all of your players on the bench play that week as well. So you get their points as well as your first 11. There's the free hit, which means you can change your 11 for 1 week and then it reverts back to how it was. Best used for double game weeks, not like how I used it completely by mistake this season and threw it away. And the third one is triple captain. So usually your captain gets you double points. If triple captain, you get 3 times the points, right? Now, I'm always terrified to use it. I still haven't used it this season. And now when I use it, it'll be a complete waste because I'm so far behind everybody else. There's no point, right? If you don't use it early in the season, I think there's very little use in using it. But it is like, you always see the things go viral, like someone triple captained John Stones when he scored 2 goals the other week and kept a clean sheet. And then everyone's like, holy shit, how do you predict that, right? So those are the 3 boosts that you get. And 1 free transfer a week.
And what about at the beginning of the season when you pick your players? Of course, you choose what league you're going to participate in with your mates and everything. Then everybody's given the same budget and players, they have a set price, correct?
Yeah, but their prices can go up and down on form.
Throughout the season.
Yeah, so for example, if you buy... if you bought Aubameyang at the beginning of the season, right, he was like 12 million, but because he was in terrible form, by the time you could have sold him, you would only be able to sell him at potentially 10.9 million, right, or 10 million. Therefore, you've lost a load of money on that player, right?
Right. And how do you feel about the fact that one weekend you'll be playing your mate and there is the possibility, however, very unlikely, that you are fielding the same 11? Doesn't that kind of take away the magic from the game?
Well, you never have exactly the same 11. Like, I've never seen that. I've never seen where someone has the exact same 11. I've seen it when you have the same captain and you're like, okay, well, I can do at least as well as he does on his captain, right? If you know what I mean? Like, the mates of mine, so I have a league with guys in Poland and they study it much more than I do. I hope, otherwise I am just terrible. And they will look at other people's lineups and see what players they can pick that will give them an advantage and stuff like that. But I think having the same players, it doesn't really bother me that much because where you make your points is on the kind of other players. But this leads me to my main problem when I play fantasy in England, which is overthinking things. I try to be clever. I try to make the left field choice, and every time it shoots me in the foot.
Right. And where are you sitting currently in your league, Rory?
I don't know. I've forgotten. No, I don't know. I think I'm like, the boys in Poland, if they hear this, if I get it wrong, they'll be like, you'll say you're higher than you were. I think I'm like 8th out of 12. It's really not good. I am the Brighton of the season. Playing beautiful football, but battling bravely against relegation.
Playing beautiful fantasy football, correct? But so my question is, at the end of because actually I have very little knowledge about fantasy football in the Premier League. So at the end of the match day, you sum up, the application sums up all the points that you got, and then whoever got higher points, they win against the other one.
No, you don't even play against each other. It's just how many points you get.
It's just points. So you see,
it's just points. It's just points. You don't play against each other. They have a cup, right? So you have the cup where you'll play random people who are also playing the competition in one-off games. And in the cup, I've won the last 4 games, by the way. So I am actually doing okay. I just shagged it earlier in the season. So those are the only ones where you will play someone else. But the rest of the league, it's just who has the best week. Yeah.
Right. How long have you been playing fantasy football in England?
On this app, probably like 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Right.
Since I was in Poland, I don't know how long ago that was. I don't want to count it. It'll make me feel old. Maybe 6 years.
Yeah, and especially for our American listeners, if you guys gonna want to get on it, it's full of Twitter pages about it, Instagram pages about it.
There's podcasts about it. There are blogs. There are YouTube videos. There's everything, tips on how to win FPL. You can get pretty deep in it pretty quickly. But like I said, I always try and be too clever. The story that my friends in Poland always try and remind me of is there was one week where I thought I'd be really clever and I was certain that Bournemouth were going to keep a clean sheet, right? I was just certain that Bournemouth were going to keep a clean sheet. So I triple captained their right back, who was called Charlie Daniels. And he's one of the most average players to ever play in the Premier League. And they conceded like 3 goals that weekend. And even before the game happened, my mates were like checking the lineup and they just WhatsApped me straight away like, Rory, have you triple captained Charlie Daniels? Like, what the fuck are you doing? They just kept sending me screenshots and they still give me shit about it. Every time he makes a transfer in his career now or there's a story about him, it gets sent to me straight away. Like, here's your mate, Rory. And look how he's doing. Like, it is one of the worst decisions I've ever made. But that's just me trying to be clever. And it was, oh God, it's such a bad decision. What was I thinking? I hope I was drunk. It
was a fantasy decision, Rory. It wasn't real life. It's okay. It's okay, buddy. Yeah. But so in Italy, what is the big difference? The big difference in Italy is that with the Fantacalcio, there is no possible way to have the same players as your mates. So let's start from the beginning. You pick the people that you want to play with, an even number, possibly, because here you actually play another team every single weekend. The most fun part about Fantacalcio is actually right at the beginning of the season. So Rory is taking part in the fantasy football here in Italy with us. And Rory, you want to talk about the auction, how it works and why it is so fun?
It's so good. Everybody just gets together, hangs out, drinks, whatever, and it's like hours. It does take a long time. I remember the first one I did was like, oh my God, it was like, 6-7 hours maybe?
Yeah, probably 6 to 7, yeah.
It was intense. But it's really good. Everyone's kind of joking and then it gets quite serious. It's weird because you get people in the room who are like really fucking serious and like they've got their laptops open, they're studying all the figures and they're like trying to figure out the differential on how much can I spend on that guy. And then you've got someone else sat there just going, well, I like that guy, fine, 50 million or whatever, and just throwing money around and seeing the different attitudes to it is so funny in what is such a serious environment. I love it. And it's actually, it's always been a good excuse for me to practice my Italian, which is always good.
There is a lot of yelling involved, as you can imagine. And then there is a lot of banter for the previous seasons. And then there is always the guy who overspends on a player, because basically how it works, some people, they start from goalkeepers and then they move to defense and then they move to midfield and then they move to attack. With our mates, what we do is basically each one, starting from the winner of the previous Fantacalcio, calls a name and says, for example, Romelu Lukaku. And there we start an auction. 1, 2, 3, 50, 60, 70, 130. Are you fucking crazy? 150. Yeah. Shit. And then you see people just like start to not bet anymore. Of course, you have a limited amount of fantasy money at the beginning, and you've got to make sure that they will be enough to build a team of usually 23 to 28 players. Then every week, you get to field a starting 11 and a bench. But every week, you are playing another team in your league. What does that mean? Every 66 points that you score, you get a goal. And then it goes 6 points to 6 points. So 72 points, it's 2 goals. 78 points is 3 goals. And you see, in the end, what score your mate got. Of course, there are plenty of Instagram pages about Fantacalcio called 65.5 because that's almost a goal, or 66, like, you know, like when you get 66 and your mate gets 65.5, it sucks pretty bad because you win 1-0 and it doesn't make any